Welcome everybody, and good to have you back with us on our journey down the road to somewhere. And we've had a couple of little weeks, 2 weeks break here, and are ready to kind of get back on where we left off. Should say that I had a wonderful 5th anniversary trip, which was the reason that I wasn't with you 2 weeks ago. And I brought back from Mexico the norovirus, which I won't go into any details on, since I know that the Battenbergs are actually eating dinner while they're watching this, and it was not very pleasant. It kind of hit me on the plane, so it was a tough ride home. Anyway, we're back, and we're in our 4th leg of our journey, which has us in the state of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is paired up with the 17 books of Old Testament prophecy. So you might just remember that we've been through what are called the major prophets, and now we're into the minor prophets. We're actually going to be looking a little bit at the book of Micah. And just kind of as an interesting trivia piece, Micah is the 33rd book of the 66 books of the Bible. So when we finish Micah, we'll actually be halfway through the Bible. And we're going to finish this stretch with the rest of the minor prophets, which will bring us right up to Easter, and we'll take a little break for Easter. And when we start up again, we will actually be in the New Testament. So that'll be a lot of fun to get into the New Testament, quite a bit different from the Old. In the book, The Road to Somewhere, which our series is based on, John and Joy have just been in Oklahoma City, and so they're leaving Oklahoma City, and they're really just going down the road a very short stretch, almost to a suburb of Oklahoma City, a little town called Bethany. And as they're driving there, Joy gives John a little bit of the background of how this was a city that was actually built by the Nazarene church in order to start a Nazarene college. And it goes all the way back to 1899. And actually, here's a picture of the original Nazarene college. Looks a lot like where I went to school, by the way. But today, Bethany is a very nice town. The town itself has a lot of kind of cool Route 66 attractions. The big ones are a series of murals that have been painted on the sides of buildings. And so Joy has decided that she wants to try and find the right mural in order to shoot the video in front of. So they kind of drive around town a little bit, and they eventually come to Barrera Diaz Mexican restaurant, which happens to have a 20-foot by 50-foot mural on the side of their building that's just filled with Route 66 scenes, and they decide that they're going to shoot their video there. So as they shoot the video, John begins by talking a little bit about the town of Bethany. He actually brings up the fact that Bethany sits on land that was once owned by Native Americans, and where they had their tribal meetings. Actually, it was called Council Grove by the Indians. And then, sort of in a smart alecky way that John sometimes is, he happens to make reference to the land being stolen from the Indians at some point. And in 1899, then the Nazarene church came along, and they actually built a whole religious settlement. And what they were attempting to do was a place where the local laws prohibited alcohol and smoking and gambling and kind of all sorts of what they considered wicked things. And they wanted to create basically kind of a spiritual utopia. Today, it's, I think, a relatively normal town, but again, it's the home of Southern Nazarene University, which traces its roots all the way back to that Nazarene College that was built in 1899. So, John, in the book, as they're shooting the video, begins to transition into the prophet Micah, which is the book that is teamed up with Bethany. And as he transitions into that, he makes an interesting observation that due to the fact that Bethany University, the Nazarene University, is there, where I'm pretty sure students are required to take the Bible as a part of their coursework, that probably more people per capita in Bethlehem know about the minor prophet Micah than any other city in America. Some of you might be familiar with him. I know you're familiar with at least one verse in the prophet that we'll get to this morning. But anyway, he segues into Micah. In the book, he doesn't make reference to this, but let me just give you the first verse of the book to kind of set the stage a little bit. And the beginning of the book reads like this: "The word of the Lord that came to Micah of Moresheth during the reigns of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, the vision he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem." You know, these opening verses oftentimes give us a lot of information. One, we're told that Micah is from a small town called Moresheth. I'll give you a little bit of a sense of where that is. It's about 25 miles southwest of Jerusalem. It was a small town, so Micah kind of, rather than coming out of a city like Jerusalem, like some of the prophets, is actually living in the south, in the kingdom of Judah, and living in kind of a small town. And he tells us specifically, again, which is often the case, the kings that he prophesied under. And part of what that tells us is that he was a contemporary of several of the prophets we've already looked at. He would have been a contemporary of Isaiah, probably Hosea, prophet Joel. And, you kind of wonder if these guys are all sort of ministering around the same time, did they know each other? We're never really told that, but there's probably good probability that they are. Also, it tells us that probably the years, looking at those kings that he was operating under, were somewhere around 740 BC, which was the year that King Uzziah died, and Jotham was his son. So the fact that he talks about that he got the word of the Lord during the reign of Jotham would give us at the beginning of his ministries probably somewhere around 740 BC. And then if we track the other kings that he says that he ministered under, he could have been ministering as late as 690 BC, which means that potentially that the prophecies that are contained in the book of Micah might be spread out over about a 50-year period. The message of the book is very similar to the message of almost all of the minor prophets. And in this case, I simply used a little different language, that the message of Micah is one of doom and hope. And there are structurally, as you read through the book, there are kind of three cycles there. He will make certain prophecies that are targeted at Samaria, which was the capital of the northern kingdom, and he'll make certain prophecies about Jerusalem, which is the capital of the southern kingdom. So his message really is targeted at both the north and the south. And because he is still targeting the north, and since he might have begun as early as 740, it means that the north has not yet been attacked and destroyed by the Assyrians, which becomes part of the message of Micah. And the themes of the book are similar to some of the other minor prophets we talked about before. I think it might have been in Hosea or Joel that the major themes that the prophet spoke against were idolatry and immorality and injustice. And you'll find in Micah that many of those same themes are there. And he really is giving a message of doom. It's a message about disaster that's coming specifically to the northern kingdom and eventually to the southern kingdom. And as is true in just about all of the minor prophets, then it's also a message of hope that there will come a time when judgment is complete in a sense, and restoration comes to particularly, in this case, the southern kingdom. In the book, John doesn't go into a lot of detail about the book of Micah. As a matter of fact, because of that, I think it's even more important in terms of this particular session that you watch the teaching video on Micah. It's very comprehensive. In the book, John, as he's doing his video, he really kind of targets only 2 verses, and they're probably the 2 best known verses in the book. The first verse that he zeroes in on, which is the one that probably many of you are familiar with, is Micah 5:2. And Micah 5:2 is a prophecy of where the Messiah is going to be born. But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. And so this is a prophecy, obviously, that tells us that when Messiah is born, he will be born in Bethlehem. You know, one of the interesting questions I think about the nativity of Jesus is, how did these wise men, these magi, who were a group of basically pagan Persian astrologers and philosophers, know how to find baby Jesus? And I think there's a number of streams that probably led into that. One is that you might remember that back at the time of Daniel, again, which would have been actually later than Micah, but let's just say that during the time of Daniel, that Nebuchadnezzar, because of Daniel's ability to interpret dreams, actually put Daniel in charge of the Magi. And so what do you think Daniel instructed them that probably came down through the years? And a little speculation here, but certainly Daniel, in Daniel chapter 9, had this timetable of the coming of Messiah and the destruction of Jerusalem, and really all the way through the second coming of the Messiah. And probably the Magi had some sense that they were living in a time where the King of the Jews was going to be born. And then, of course, the star, which was some kind of a supernatural phenomena or some a way in which the planets had come together to create what would have looked like an extremely bright star. And and when they put that together, of course, they come to Herod and they ask him, where's the one that's been born king of the Jews? Now, Micah, since he preceded Daniel, it's also quite possible that they had information that Bethlehem was the place, but they come to Herod and they ask him, where is the king of the Jews to be born? And you might remember after they leave, Herod, who was just insanely jealous for the throne, brings in his advisors, sort of his theologians, you might think of, and asks, where is it that the Messiah is to be born? And they quote Micah 5:2 and say, Bethlehem. And the tragedy of that is that then that Herod issues a decree that every baby child 2 years old and under is to be murdered. And so there's a massacre that takes place in Bethlehem. And of course, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus had been warned about that and had left Bethlehem and headed down to Egypt. So John talks a little bit in the text about Micah 5:2. The other verse that he zeroes in on is Micah 6:8. And some people have said that this almost encapsulates the entire message of the Old Testament in terms of what God requires of us. It's actually a beautiful verse, particularly if you think about the fact that they were struggling with injustice and idolatry and so many other issues that Micah simply makes this statement that he's shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to act justly, so there's a statement about injustice, to love mercy or loving kindness is another way of translating the Hebrew word there, and to walk humbly with your God. And so, again, that would address certainly the issue of idolatry. So John kind of quotes that and comes to the end of the video shoot. At the very end of his little video, he actually kind of makes another tongue-in-cheek remark, remembering that Bethany was this place where just about everything was prohibited at one point in time. And John kind of finishes by saying that they're getting ready to head down to their next stop where he plans to have a beer and a cigar. And as soon as he's finished shooting the video, Joy kind of looks at him and assures him that that line is going to be edited out of the final video. So again, kind of in conclusion, the book itself doesn't give us a lot about Micah. And again, the teaching video, it's just a great overview. I looked at it this week, and it's very comprehensive. It's important. And you have a link to that both in your email and on Facebook. And again, at the end of this video, down in your left-hand corner will be a way that you can immediately just go over, click on that link, and go over and watch the teaching video on Micah. Next week we'll be heading down to Hydra, Oklahoma, and we're going to be looking at the minor prophet Nahum. And again, it's my guess that this is another very obscure book for most people, but it won't be for you if you hang with us next week. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.